Hello. I suspect that my child, 3 years old, has sensory sensitivity. He is afraid of other children pushing him or pulling his toys. He constantly hears sounds of ambulances, fire engines, cats, dogs passing by on the street. He can't stand socks or different textures. He is always warm. He is generally social and likes to play with his friends, chasing each other. This is a question that comes from such a place of deep observation and love. So many caregivers find themselves right here, trying to piece together behaviors that just don't seem to quite add up. Okay, let's dive into this together.
So first things first, it's absolutely essential to validate these observations. What you're noticing is real and it is significant. The key is to approach this whole thing with a sense of calm curiosity. You have to remember, at 3 years old, a child's nervous system is in this profound state of development. It's like a brand new supercomputer, still figuring out how to process the millions of signals the world is throwing at it every single moment.
So let's organize these behaviors by the sensory systems they're connected to. Think of it like we're assembling a puzzle. Each piece is going to give us a much clearer picture of how this particular child is experiencing their world. All right, let's start with the auditory system, with hearing. When a child consistently notices distant sirens or animals, sounds that most of us adults have trained our brains to just filter out, it's not an overactive imagination. This points directly to a heightened auditory sensitivity. Their hearing system is simply more acute, taking in a wider and way more detailed soundscape than many others. Now, this is the really crucial question to ask ourselves. Okay, so they perceive the sound. That's one piece of information. But the child's reaction to that sound, well, that tells us so much more about how it's impacting their nervous system. The emotional response is really the key distinction here. Is the child overwhelmed? Are they showing signs of distress, like covering their ears or getting really dysregulated? Or are they just acting like a little news reporter, matter-of-factly noting, "I hear an ambulance"? One indicates distress, while the other might simply be a temperamental trait, a unique and valid way of being in the world. Okay, let's move on to the sense of touch. The observations about socks, textures, and feeling constantly warm, those are direct clues about the tactile system. For a child with this kind of sensitivity, sensations that most people would register as totally neutral, like the seam on a sock or the tag on a shirt, can feel like a persistent irritant. It can be almost like having sandpaper rubbing on their skin all day long. Now for the social piece, and this is where a really important nuance comes in. The caregiver notes that the child is social and likes to play. This is a wonderfully positive sign. It strongly suggests that the core challenge here might not be social at all, but actually sensory. And this comparison just illustrates that difference perfectly. On one side, we see a socially motivated child who loves a predictable, structured game like chasing. But on the other side, we see what can cause that overwhelm: the chaotic, unpredictable physical contact of being pushed or having a toy grabbed away. So the child isn't avoiding their friends, they might just be avoiding the sensory overload that comes with that unexpected physical interaction. Okay, so we've analyzed these observations, but this leads us to the most practical question of all. When do these traits cross a threshold into becoming a challenge that might really benefit from some professional support? The guiding principle is this: does this way of experiencing the world interfere with the child's ability to function happily, to learn, and to engage with their peers and their family? See, the goal is never to change a child's temperament, but it's to make sure that temperament isn't causing them significant distress or limiting their development. So here are some clear signs that it might be time for a consultation. If you notice the reactions are getting stronger over time, if sensory-related meltdowns are a regular occurrence, or if the child starts to withdraw from social situations they once enjoyed. And of course, it's always important to look at the whole picture, including any other developmental flags, like in speech or motor skills. If you do decide to seek help, this is a really useful roadmap. A child psychologist can assess the overall emotional and developmental picture. An occupational therapist who specializes in sensory integration can provide a very targeted evaluation and incredibly practical strategies. And a pediatric neurologist may be part of the team if there are broader neurological questions. But look, regardless of whether you seek a formal evaluation, there is so much that can be done right at home to create a supportive environment. The goal here is to build a safe harbor where your child's nervous system can feel regulated and secure. These are simple but truly profound strategies. Offering clothing choices gives them a sense of autonomy. Verbally preparing them for a loud noise provides predictability and control. A quiet zone is a safe retreat. And it's fascinating that activities like jumping and chasing, which this child already enjoys, are deeply regulating for the nervous system. The most crucial point, though, is to validate their experience, not force them to endorse something that is genuinely distressing to their system. Now, let's end by looking at all of this from a completely different angle. What if we were to reframe our entire understanding of what it means to be a sensitive child? This right here, this is maybe the most important takeaway of all. Sensory sensitivity is not a disorder. It is not a diagnosis in itself. It is simply a characteristic, a different way a nervous system is wired to perceive and process the world. And that specific wiring, that sensitivity, is so often the very foundation for some truly incredible human qualities that blossom over time. Children who feel the world this intensely often grow into adults who are highly empathetic because they can feel what others are feeling on a much deeper level. The child who notices every distant sound often becomes a deeply observant adult. The one who's sensitive to textures and light may develop a unique and powerful creative voice. So the final question isn't, how do we fix this? But rather, how can we support and nurture this child's world? How do we provide the safety, the understanding, and the tools they need to transform what feels like a challenge today into their unique superpower tomorrow?